Okay, so here we are on the 5th episode of World of Hustle podcast. I'm here with one of my buddies, former colleagues, great guy, Mr. You are a great guy,
I
Patrick.
appreciate it.
Mr. Patrick Amans.
Thank you for having me. This is like a dream of mine, so still in awe. I feel like a celebrity right now, like
Bro.
looking around.
Like I was just telling you, you're a bad dude. You kind of are a celebrity to me. I know you're a humble man, but I really appreciate you being here. So I'm glad to have you on, Patrick. So today, as we discussed, we're going to talk a little bit about your background. You've been working in corporate finance for a little while now, finance and accounting. So we're going to talk about that. But you are in my eyes, particularly. There's more I want to talk to you about than that, as we mentioned before. And so I think it'll be some interesting stuff. We're going to go a little bit different than we usually do within this episode. Patrick is active military. For those of you guys that don't know Patrick, to me, like I said before, Patrick is I think you're just a bad dude, man. He's a freaking cock diesel military dude. Just you kicking ass in all parts of life, in my opinion. Really admire you. I know recently you went down to Texas for Border Patrol, that sort of thing, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I guess the mission or the assignment was to have my guys sit out on these sites and basically either be a deterrent or kind of report in any migrant activity. Migrant's a term that I guess is a politically correct term, or the DoD terminology, Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would be there as a deterrent or to report in suspicious activity like human trafficking, drugs, the migrant activity in itself. And also as kind of a safety feature, people get lost in the Texas desert or the crossings.
Yeah.
And they've actually set up sites out there where you can press a button and help will come to you because you get out there, you don't have any water. You've been bit by something, because everything in Texas is mean, angry, and tries to kill you, sting you, bite you, or whatever. So we did that for about 13 months, and it was kind of an eye-opening experience because we live in Tennessee, and it is what it is. It's a nice place, but there, as you leave Laredo, you have to go through a checkpoint, and mind you, you're in the United States, so. You leave, you're going through this checkpoint, and they're asking you, are you a citizen of this country? You have anything you're not supposed to have, and stuff like that. And then you get into what I would call the United States, free roam, able to move, and stuff like that. But could you imagine like leaving where we're at now, trying to go to Nashville, and you have to go through a checkpoint before you can get to Nashville?
That would be wild, man.
It's insane. So,
yeah. Well, see, that was eye-opening to me. I didn't know that. I knew we had Border Patrol down there, but I didn't know you guys also were like helping folks out, and that's awesome. I also want to say it makes me very comfortable. And first of all, I appreciate your service. I have to say that first. Thank you very much for the work you've done. I can't say thanks enough. But I also want to say that it makes me comfortable knowing that we've got guys like you down there, smart guys. I'm going to tell you again, I'll say this again. I might say it again for episode over. You intimidate me a little bit. This guy, look at this guy. He's freaking cocked. I mean, dude, and you do jujitsu. It's just like you're, like I said before, Patrick, you're a badass, man. Anyway, so anyway, like I said, thank you. And thanks for sharing that. I want to ask you something else, man. So something else happened in Texas lately, right? The whole shooting thing.
mm-hmm.
And obviously this is we're gonna get into the stuff I talked about, what this episode's about. But I just wanted to ask you while I had you here, somebody whose opinion I really respect, and I know you more so than other people, I would value your opinion on this particular subject. We had that shooting, and recently it's been a big issue with like gun control. Okay, and before you say anything, I'm gonna give you my opinion, and then I'd like to hear yours. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So I personally. I'm for guns, right? I want people to have the right to protect themselves. I really believe in that. My family's we've always been all my family, from my granddad down to me today, all of these had firearms to protect ourselves. Never done anything crazy with them. So I really believe in that. But today, what I'm seeing in the media is a little bit of what I think is, an effort to maybe move us towards just this really bad outlook on weapons or guns. And I think it's more of I think it's an issue elsewhere. I think it's an issue of maybe there may be too much access to guns, or that maybe people that are not mentally well getting access to guns. You hear the argument all the time, like they could have done these things with anything. It's not necessarily a gun issue. And I know you're a gun owner and military, so obviously know your way around weapons very well. I just want to briefly get what are your thoughts on it?
Like I was telling you earlier, it's kind of a sticky subject because we're involved in these camps now, and you either are or you aren't. And I feel like the reason why not a lot of discussion is happening around this is because you have sides that are like more conservative, that, hey, if you take this away, we're never going to get this back, and this is just one domino that leads to another domino, so on and so forth. And then you have people who are more liberal, who might not understand firearms, weapons, and they see this tragedy, and it's either like, well, the clear solution is, to get rid of it. But you have a car wreck, you don't ban cars. You have a plane crash, you don't ban planes. I just think it's people sitting down from different perspectives and really having that conversation, because I think that people on the left might have some good ideas and people on the right might have some good ideas, but we're not communicating enough. And, for me personally, as a legal firearm owner, I don't want to give up that right, because I want to be able to protect my family. And I think that these shootings are not the norm. It's the fact that there are casualties, and it's such a bad an incident that's why it captures the news, and the news is on there to scare you, bring viewers, and it, what perfect way than a school full of kids got shot up. And then what are you going to say to that? Tell the dead kids that?
Right.
I don't have anything to say. Like, I don't want to talk to somebody's family or parents, because it's a tragic situation. So it's not like that there's a perfect answer for anything, but I do think that it's not a gun issue, to be cliche. I think it might be a mental health issue, because the people who do this are not right in their mind, and they're at such a point in their lives where this seems like a good idea. And I was telling you about that story about the guy who was talking about, hey, I was almost a school shooter. I was living in my friend's shed. I tried to commit suicide. And then the social services were involved, and the mom came to pick him up. And on the way home, she was like, I'll get you sharper razor blades. Like,
right.
What kind of, I don't live in that environment. Like, what would my thought process be, or my mindset? So,
right. And I think that story perfectly illustrates that it's more of a mental health issue than it is. I mean, because you're in that type of situation, in that type of mindset, having to pick up a gun this time, it could have been something else. So thanks for illustrating that or explaining that. I want to zone in really quick, because I think it's a great segue to our corporate finance conversation. Is you said the importance of communicating. Like, we need to sit down and really dig through the issue, the opposing sides, see what this side says, see what that side says, and come to the best possible solution. But we have to really communicate about it and really get into the meat of what the issues are. That's what you were saying to an extent, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's that cliche statement, in a compromise, you should walk away unhappy and I should walk away unhappy, and neither one of us get everything that we want, but we've pushed or moved forward in a certain way where the topic or the conversations happen. We both walk away with a lot more knowledge, and though neither one of us are happy, we both pushed to something we know needs to happen, or else we wouldn't be having the discussion or the compromise anyways.
Yeah, makes sense. And now you say that, not to go too far off topic, have you read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
It was one of the books for my MBA program, Stephen Covey or something like that. Yeah,
Dr. Covey. He, at the end of that, he talks about the win-win situation, and I just love that. I think that's what you're kind of illustrating there, or explaining. Why do I keep using that word? Thanks, Patrick. Okay, so we said that. Thanks for commenting on that. I appreciate it. One more thing I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
before we actually get into your episode. You've done jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like I said before, I was asking you, are you big into self-defense? And you told me, rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Love that. I think I saw something on Joe Rogan or something where they were saying, the guy was like, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say, dude, like I'm so much for that. And so anyway, man, that's sick that you do jiu-jitsu. Like I said, I'm just trying to give the audience, like make the audience aware. This dude's a bad dude. Like, how far did you go in jiu-jitsu? You did it for a few years, right?
I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, still training. Obviously, I was telling you I had herniated a disc in my back, so I've been off for about a year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but it's just one of those things. It's not what a lot of people think it is. It's more of a kind of like a HIIT workout, and then you're wrestling against somebody else who they call it, what's your game?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you talk about jiu-jitsu, you're rolling, which means you're, in a match with somebody, and then you're playing your game. It's what am I doing to submit, control my opponent, and then their game. It's like chess. What am I doing versus what they're doing, and how are they reacting to what I'm doing, and how am I reacting to what they are doing? So as you get up higher in the belts, you're playing somebody who is a chess master as opposed to somebody who's just like banging their head against the wall hoping that whatever they're doing will work. So I'm just really big fan of jiu-jitsu. Don't like getting hit in the face. I think boxing's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Joe Rogan had said that, for one-on-one, jiu-jitsu is going to be your move, but as far as striking, boxing or Muay Thai would be more of a multiple on one as opposed to jiu-jitsu being a one-on-one, because you can control somebody, give or take your skill set and their skill set. But if it's multiple people versus one people with boxing and the Muay Thai, you want to be able to put them down, get those knockouts or those, skill shots and stuff like that, and being able to move on. But boxing never interested me, so I just kind of went the avenue of jiu-jitsu because I wanted to be able to maybe handle myself in a situation, but like ultimately I don't want to hurt anybody. But I mean, I can lay on somebody long enough for somebody to come help and let's like de-escalate the situation. So
yeah,
it's kind of the avenue or the reason why I chose jiu-jitsu.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, I know you say you don't want to hurt anybody, but it's very few people I'd say that could hurt you. But one of the things I want to ask you though is I know you're also extremely strong too. And because I saw you, dude, I saw you jacking around like 315. What's your Benchmax? I'm just curious.
The most I've ever bench pressed is 450 pounds. I used to work out with 315, do a 3x10.
What?
And then the most I've repped, I guess consecutively, is 405 for 5. But it's bad. It's bad for your body. I would not recommend that.
Don't recommend that.
Yeah, never.
Does it?
If I could go back, I would not.
You wouldn't do it again?
No, absolutely not.
It's just too much weight.
Yeah, it's too much stress on your body.
So, is it a situation where you're like, you have to ask the question, it's like, I can do this, but should I do this?
Absolutely. It's like everything good in life. I mean, too much is always bad in anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's fun and like you get an accolade where, it's impressive or, people think it's cool, but then like my shoulder's a little bummed now. And every now and then, I throw out my arm and it's like, about to be 35, not feeling like I used to. So
yeah,
I would go back and take off some of that wear and tear on my body for sure.
Got you. Did it help you at all in jiu-jitsu with all that strength, that amount of strength?
Yes and no. Jiu-jitsu is called the gentle art. It's a finesse. Like if you're having to use so much muscle, then you're not doing what you need to do. It's a more technique-based thing. I would say that strength always plays a part in a lot of things that you do, but I think that it makes you lazy in some ways, because when I first started out, I would shrink my way through everything and not pick up the technique. And once I stopped using so much strength and started trying to focus more on the technique, like this technique is not working, or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing unless I put everything I have behind it, and then on top of that, the more tense and tight you get, more fatigued you get, as you go along. So,
wears you out?
oh yeah, for sure. It's
Got you.
Uh, I'm a race car with a 5-gallon gas tank, and I'd rather be a race car with a 20-gallon gas tank. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I got you. Well, awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. So I will not derail us anymore.
no, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so like I said before, folks, Patrick, or I don't know if I said this before or not, but Patrick, you worked in corporate finance and accounting and finance for a long time. You're hold a MAcc. I know you did your undergrad in accounting. You have an MBA. So just loaded from an educational standpoint as well. I know today you're working. You told me, but what can you tell us again for the audience?
It's JBW Industries. They're an equipment manufacturer, like hand tools, metal forming, woodworking, just everything kind of in the genre of like you would think of as far as like at home or personal kind of shop equipment.
Gotcha.
So really small, flat organization, 3 steps away from the CEO. So just kind of different from anything that I've really been involved in thus far. Everything else has been bigger corporation, Fortune 500, so on and so forth. So,
okay. So let's, and what I know you're, what is your title there today? What are you doing today?
I'm basically a process manager, financial planning and analysis. It's taking the results through the month or ad hoc analysis and basically explaining to senior management why we perform the way we have or what's going on as far as from a financial standpoint. A lot of people don't know this, but freight container costs are through the roof. They're almost double to triple what they were at before COVID.
Yeah.
And that's affecting a lot of businesses' bottom line. And there's not really an end in sight as far as when this is going to come back to a normal or pre-COVID situation. And it's not something you think about in your day-to-day life. Like, how did what I ordered or how did what I want get here? I mean, if it's outsourced from China, then it's put on a boat in a Connex or shipping container, sits on the water. And I mean, some of this has come to be more relevant as far as, all the boats that were sitting out in California and stuff like that. But a lot of businesses were not prepared or didn't understand the impact of this situation. So,
yeah. I guess the answer is probably obvious, but would you say that's a major contributor to some of the inflation we're seeing today?
For sure. I mean, the cost got to be passed along somehow. And if you're making 30% margin and all of a sudden that's dropped down to 10% margin, well, that attributes to the cost increase because the company's got to pay for it somehow, or they're not able to produce that good or that service that they had once produced. So
makes sense. Another question I want to ask you, since you're in FP&A, can you just give us an idea of what a good FP&A department looks like?
FP&A is a glue between all the other departments that I've seen, because in accounting you have people, you get this like nickname, the bean counter, counting beans and stuff like that, but they don't really, they close the books, they understand what's happened financially from a not a prospective but a retrospective kind of outlook. They understand what's happened through the month,
right,
where FP&A is a more perspective looking, like we understand what's happened through the month, but how's that affect us going down the road or for the rest of the year or for the the annual budgeting process. So
gotcha.
We basically talk to all the other departments, gather the information, and have that accounting or that finance background in order to say, according to the numbers, this is what's happened, but I don't have that engineering background. So I would go to engineering and understand from a certain standpoint, like, why are we down in this? And it's, because we've changed the boxing in this or the packaging in this, and we've went from 140 on a container to 120 on a container, and that affects the bottom line. Or from a supply chain perspective, like, we have these on back order, we're not getting revenue from this, we're about to have a cost increase. Well, why are we even thinking about a cost increase whenever we have so many items on back order? Is the supplier going to charge us a new price for all these items on back order? So it's just like literally talking to other departments and putting what they have to say in a financial or an accounting kind of mindset in order to present to the leadership, because at the end of the day, it's dollars and cents for everybody.
Yeah.
What's going on? Why are we losing money? And you wouldn't think about this, but in a more profitable organization, those questions don't get asked because they're profitable. They're like, oh, everything's fine. And then when COVID happens or the supply chain backup happens, they're like, we have a lot of work to do. And that's one of the good things about going to this new company. They were so profitable for so long. Some of these questions didn't get answered, and created a role for me. So I was able to kind of slide in there and start making an impact from day one.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. That prompted a couple questions for me. So it kind of, and I know this is probably obvious for some people, but it sounded like in there that you were saying the distinction when we talk about accounting versus FP&A. FP&A looks a lot more forward-looking, and it's a lot more involved. Like you have to be. Would you say that you have to be pretty good at investigating, communicating, presenting with people within FP&A as opposed to accounting?
For sure, it's you ever heard, is it the 5 whys? Like you get down to the root cause after you ask so many questions. You don't need to stop at the first why. Like, why did this happen? Oh, this is why that happened. Let's move on. But it's the why behind the why behind the why that really. So it's like we have a supply increase. Well, why do we have a supply increase? Well, because the price of raw materials are going up. Well, why are the price of raw materials going up? Because COVID happened. Because the supply chain backed up. Because everybody wants these resources, and when you're a small company, you're competing against much larger companies that can afford to pay more and stuff like that. So it's like we really ask the why and then try to go so far as to explain a root cause as opposed to just like a surface level explanation. So I guess to answer your question, a good FP&A department is a department that can tell you why more than at a surface level. They can understand the root cause of why something is happening, and then explain it to somebody who might not necessarily have a financial or accounting perspective. It's like putting it into words, so someone who has no idea what's happening in all these parts of the business can really wrap their mind around what has actually happened.
Got you. That makes sense. Would you say that your accounting background, and the reason I ask this is because I've met a lot of guys that they come out with just like a finance degree, more heavily on the finance side, particularly undergrad, and don't necessarily pursue anything in terms of like accounting later on, and they end up in FP&A and so that sort of thing. And you've been pretty heavily in accounting within your education and within your career previous to this. Do you think that has really helped you within FP&A?
Yeah, for sure. In the accounting master's program, you have a lot of critical thinking case studies. You're basically using GAAP to further an argument or to take a position on a certain stance on the case. Like basically, one I remember just off the top of my head was, the software in Aloha system, which the Aloha system is what restaurants use, the touch pads and stuff to put in your orders. Okay. Is the software separate from that machine? I didn't know the answer at that point in time. Well, do you ask yourself questions? Does the machine function without the software? Are there other software alternatives? And you look at all these things based on GAAP and formulate an argument, and then you turn it in for a grade. And I think that that's where it's really helped me, is because in FP&A or when I give a recommendation on something the business should do, if I present a straw man argument, then people who have much more experience than I do or who really understand the business can poke holes in it, and they look at you and you don't get that credibility or that respect when you're giving your proposal or whatever you're trying to convey.
Right.
So I think the accounting really helped me because, like, if I'm going for something, then I'm coming still, man. I'm giving everything that I've got in order to help somebody understand, like, this is why we perform this way, or for a capital expenditure project, this is why we should invest in this or not invest in this, so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
Because FP&A is really involved in CapEx as well, at least from everything I've seen. At the smaller company, you're writing the case study for the capital expenditure, And in the larger organizations, you're managing the capital expenditure as a project. Like, yes, we're spending the money here. No, we're not, because it's just like the government. Any money that you're given that you don't spend at the end of the year, they're going to take out of your budget for next year. So,
yeah, I've seen that. Well, so when you and I have talked about, so we both are MTSU graduates. Mm-hmm. You're talking to me about the MAcc program, and I have to say, like, I'm a big MBA advocate. Obviously, I'm biased because I have an MBA, but now you have an MBA too, so you can speak on this a lot better than I can. For people out there that are considering getting a MAcc versus maybe alternatively an MBA, I know in the past you have mentioned that you thought particularly MTSU's MAcc program was very challenging, like you just said, helped you to think critically, think through things. How would you say that kind of shakes out versus an MBA? And I know MBAs can get an emphasis, but just in general.
So I think MBA is more widely known. So I think that having the MBA in itself is a good thing, because I think a master's degree is now the new college education, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because to set yourself apart, you had to have a college degree. Now everybody has college degrees. How do you set yourself apart from the people who've set themselves apart? You go back and you get that master's. So
yeah.
For me, the accounting or the master's of accounting might have been harder because maybe I'm not so good at it. And if there's no point in getting the MAcc, I think any master's is fine. But, in finance, especially for me, I can tell you that it's helped me greatly. I finished the MAcc with a 3.3, and then I finished my MBA with a 4.0. Yeah. And the MBA program at Lipscomb was not easy, but it was easy compared to everything that I've been through, and maybe because I had a base and understood what a master's program took.
Yeah.
And then competing against executives, because it was an executive MBA program. I'm going to school with people who haven't been to school in so long, and I'm a year or two out, and I'm outperforming a lot of my peers, even in C-suite or senior level roles within their organization. So
yeah. Okay. Well, I had a brain fart for a second, Patrick.
Throw off your OODA loop?
You threw off my OODA loop, man. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, cool. So let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
And before we started, one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, you talked about just you've moved into a smaller organization. I've done the same thing. I have my thoughts on it as well. I want to talk about some of the challenges that we see in working in larger organizations and some of the benefits of that versus, that same thing within a small organization. And I want to get your opinion. I'll give you my opinion on which one's a better situation. So can we back up to our original time that we met? You and I met working at Cummins.
Yeah.
Great time. I had a lot of fun at that company. And it was a Fortune 500 company. And you and I have talked about this before. I'll go ahead and start. One of the challenges that I saw within larger organizations was something you and I talked about the other day. It didn't seem to me like it was as much of a focus on maintaining talent. You said you kind of saw that too, right?
For sure.
What do you think's in behind that?
The fact that they can get more talent at the drop of a dime. They're a Fortune 500 company. I mean, that. And then the fact that everybody's looking for their first job, and you can pull top talent knowing that you have defined processes in place where you can shift the work over to the existing team, and you're really not affected over it, other than maybe for a month or a week you have an overloaded team, but they're still able to do it because at the larger companies you have those defined, repetitive, well-established processes that you don't find sometimes in a smaller company.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. So I think that could be a reason why.
I would 100% agree with that. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't say it like that before, but that's 100% true. They have way more resources to get people. And like you said, like the processes are so well defined within those larger organizations. It's like yeah, you may be a star performer, but how much better can you be that we would need to like pursue you? Um, but I'll say like I don't know if it's something that those larger companies are working on. I know there's been obviously turnover issues at a lot of companies. We had the Great Resignation recently, and you see these people out here. There was a guy. I remember there being a guy at Cummins that was like just a stud. He was a stud. He'd worked remember the FP&A rotation program, and the guy had gotten like a CPA and CMA and all this stuff, and he got done, and there really wasn't a place for him, and he kind of jetted out. And at the time, I thought, man, that's kind of sad because they put a lot of emphasis into training this guy, and he's brilliant and talented, but you saw him go on, and he moved into a small organization, and then I've kind of followed his career a little bit, and the guy's just taken off, and it seems like the same for you. So I guess one of the things I'll ask now, Patrick, is what do you think are the benefits of working in some of those larger organizations like that?
The larger organizations, like I was saying, just the defined processes. You go in, you have your deliverables, and you lose stuff having those deliverables because your job is to produce that deliverable. You understand how it works, but a lot of times you don't necessarily dive into the why. It's just this person needs this report. You know how the report works, you know where the information comes from and stuff like that. So you have these defined processes, and then you have a complete and competent HR program that has all the policies in place. Like, hey, I'm giving you 1 day notice. I'm going to take my vacation. Really doesn't affect the team in general.
Yeah.
Work can be shifted around or that. And, just I guess how everything operates, there's a hum, there's a flow. And then if there's a kink or a catch in the machine's going to keep going. That the kink or that cog is going to flatten itself out. So
yeah,
that's kind of,
All right, what were we saying? Shit.
I think you were asking me what some of the benefits
of
a larger organization are.
That's right.
And then there's always that carrot dangled in front of you, knowing that there are more positions that you can make or you can achieve because it's such a large organization. It's almost like you can see the CEO, like I'm going to be the CEO one day or the CFO one day, but in actuality, like that's usually not on the table,
right?
Because you don't come from the breed or the grooming or the
right.
The people who are destined to be in charge of those organizations because they're already working on the CEO. For 10 years ago, like Tom Lineberger at Cummins had taken over. You don't think he was groomed or made ready for that position? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Larger organizations are planning for when those things happen. So
I'm glad you point that out. It took me a while. To realize that. And I think looking back, I'm kind of glad that I moved on because I was one of those guys that was like, thought, I could move up and this sort of thing. And I get that same vibe. Like they have an idea now. They like you said, they have an idea of the players in the organization, the guys they think they're going to stay there, and they've started working on them today for something they're going to be doing, like you said, 10 or 15 years down the road. I went back and looked at Tom's resume, and it absolutely looked like they handpicked this guy, groomed him all the way for this. Unlikely to be me. So anyway.
That happens more than you think. Like in the accounting department, a lot of the jobs at the Big Four or these private accounting firms are held for people who go to your Vanderbilts and stuff like that. So the people who come from MTSU have to be top performers. They're competing at a level, they're being made ready at a level to compete with people who come from Vanderbilt or UT Knoxville and, schools around the area and stuff. And that was a dirty secret that I had no idea about.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah. Another benefit I would say of, or another drawback I'll say of big organizations versus small organizations is when you get ready to try to learn what's going on. I think you kind of touched on it a little bit before, but like I said, you just give this report to whomever. It took me a while in big organizations to kind of really put things together. Like for a long time, particularly with my role at Cummins, I didn't really see big picture how things connected and like everything that I didn't even really understand our business unit, you know what I mean? And how it served the rest of the company. Now that I've worked in smaller organizations the last 3 or 4 years, I can like whatever anybody's doing, like it's not like they're on the other side of the world, right? It's not like they're far separated from me. I can walk over to the other side of the building and get the full understanding of what they're doing, how it connects to my department. And so that's one of the things I've liked about working in a small organization. So I guess that being said, let's kind of transition. What are some of the things that kind of suck about working in a small organization, would you say?
Not well-defined processes. You might come into a situation where your ad hoc is now the standard of the reporting or how to do things. And I'm running into that now where in the organization that I'm in, we have a problem with inventory, and we're just now starting a process to understand, where are our backups, where are our buildups. So I want to go back to one thing, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I think a drawback to a large organization is compensation as well, because you get in at a certain price, and the next position is 6 to 8%, and you lived the 6 to 8% life for the rest of your life. And I think that going outside, even if it's to another organization, is the only way that I found that I can get compensated in a way that's fair and valuable to me. So
I've had the same conversations. 100% agree. I've heard, you come into those organizations and wherever you are, it's really hard to move up. I mean, you can add all the value in the world. And again, I think that's a great opportunity for me to go back to a small organization. You go into a small organization and those undefined processes or all that stuff that's like not there, that needs to be there, that the big organization has, you have the opportunity to bring it in. And like you said today, you're 3 steps from the CEO. So the CEO can really see what you're doing. And the CEO has the power to make moves. And so if they think that Patrick is worth this or that, they don't have to go through all these hoops, right? In a big organization, not the case. Like you could be the best in the world. You got to go through the processes. So that's one thing I've really liked about working in small organizations. I feel more valued. I feel like that not only can I see really quickly the effects of my work, but others see the impact really quickly. And you can see how that, being in accounting and finance, we see how that in some way translate into the bottom line, right? And that's a beautiful thing to me.
At the new organization I'm at, there doesn't have to be your paragraph and line number or job opening. You can get promoted to manager if you're doing a good job, if you're meeting your metrics, if you're hitting your goals and stuff like that. And at Cummins or at AXO, you're not getting promoted unless there's a defined job position already out there that, this is who you're reporting to, this is what you'll be doing. Like, I knew that when I was leaving AXO, which is the company I just left, there was going to be no talk of, hey, this company's offered me this, can you match it or can we get somewhere close? They're going to be like, well, good luck on your new endeavors. We'll have somebody to refill your spot in 3 or 4 days. And exactly, so I think
I think that's a powerful lesson for anybody listening to what you just said. It's like, you're in those big organizations, if you're looking for more compensation, and you think that going out, and I've seen people do this, Patrick, like they'll go out and try to get offers from other places in an effort to negotiate. And it's like, they're like, well, that's nice that you have those offers, so do what you want with them. That's the case with 99% of people probably. So just, keep that in mind. Like in a big organization, that's going to be tough. I'm glad you mentioned that too, though. In a smaller organization, I feel like that you shouldn't have to do that. And I feel like in a small organization, like you can go, particularly if it's a good organization and people value you, you can go and have a conversation with your boss and be like, hey, I think that my work, I'm getting paid this right now. I think my work is worth this. What can we do? It's a lot easier to have that conversation and see movement on that than it is in big organizations. Because those people, like the bosses that I had at Cummins, nothing they could do for me on compensation. So, do you have something else you want to say on that?
Oh, yeah. So a gentleman just left our organization, and the conversation literally came down to, is this a compensation thing? Because that's something that we could discuss with the head of HR.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I've just been doing this job for 4 years. I'm ready to learn something new. Yeah. So it was brought up during his exit interview. Like, he was good talent. They were like, what can we do to keep you? Is it this? And it's like, well, in this role, I'm not really growing. And the only thing I can do is take on more work to grow. I want to go try something else. And they were receptive to hear that. And they wished him well on his way and stuff. But the conversation was at least had. And at the larger organizations thus far, I've not found that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we, I think we've kind of beaten that horse right there. That was good. Did you have any more comments on that?
I think that in the smaller organizations, like you had mentioned, that I've been at my new organization for a little under 2 months, and I've gotten a text from the VP of supply chain saying people are noticing what you're doing. That speaks volumes to me. And the fact that I might not go in there and establish a process immediately, but I get something on paper that can be defined and worked with. And then in the larger organizations, you might produce something, they're like, well, this is not valuable, and they scrap it, and they don't give it time to evolve or grow into something that might be something that's beneficial. So,
yeah.
Or you're not responsible for even doing the process. Like, the process comes to you and you're supposed to replicate someone else's work, somebody who's come up with an idea or a way of doing things, and you're like, I don't understand how this works. This is not my work. So
yeah, I got you.
That would be what I would say about that.
Yeah, let me ask you this on that. Who would you say, this is what I think, and you tell me if you agree.
Okay.
I would say that people that are going to be better off in a larger organization are people that they've reached a point in their life where they're comfortable and they just kind of want to coast. And people that, like you, I mean, dude, you've gone out and gotten a MAcc, MBA, obviously you're a high achiever. It's probably more advantageous for you to move into an organization where you can have a bigger impact more quickly. I think I'm more aligned with that too. That's been kind of my approach. I feel like I've moved into smaller organizations. Would you agree with that idea? What I just said?
1,000%. Or the fact that that is not what their goal or passion is.
Mm-hmm.
You get somebody who does what we do or in accounting and finance, and they're miserable. Yeah. So they get in a way or in a role where they can duplicate the process. They do good work. All their stuff's in on time. But at 8 hours, they leave it. There's no thought. Like, I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking that I can make this process better, because this process runs and it's efficient and everything like that.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I grew up homeless and extremely poor. My last year of high school, I was my guidance counselor. Shout out to Miss Terry Cozart. Yeah. I had no plan, and that's initially why I joined the military, is because I didn't know how I was going to figure anything out. Yeah. No college money, no way to understand. And for me, I go in there and I'm thinking, how can I get promoted? How can I do this? How can I get further than from where I came? Which creates its own set of challenges and problems, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't stop and smell the roses. Like, I live in now, due to inflation, a $500,000 home. Poor Patrick or old me was like, this is the life I've always dreamed of. And now that I'm here, it's not good enough. Like, I want to do better. Yeah. I might not be the CEO or the CFO or anything like that, but it's not unrealistic to think to be a member of an organization at a director level where I can literally have for all the wants. I can support my family. I can do all those things. So yeah. I would 100% agree with you. And the people who go to these larger organizations are either not in love with what they do, or they're using that as a stable income, insurance, and then they're pursuing their other passions like side businesses or getting something up off the ground in order to move to that.
Yeah.
So,
got you. So I didn't know what you just said about being homeless.
Oh, for sure.
So I want to talk about that really quickly.
It's an interesting story. I'll give you the full background on it. My mom forged a prescription when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
which is a felony. I don't know. That's a pretty big deal. Felony, you know. And after that, I'd kind of bounced around from home to home to home, living with friends, trying to stay outside the system because we've all heard the stories. Children get raped, you get beat, neglected, you become a product of the system and stuff like that. And I've always been stubborn. I've always been kind of the black sheep of a family, or the black sheep of a family of black sheep. Like, I never like people telling me what to do. I've always just been kind of different. So, like, my mindset is I got to take care of myself. And then I, bouncing around from home to home to home since, 8th grade, I get to like halfway through high school, my senior year, having everything figured out or being used to being able to take care of myself. And then the living situation I was in, the people were like, sorry, you can't live in here anymore. And the next day I went to school and I talked to Miss Cozart and I was like, I'm going to disenroll myself. I need to find a job. I need to be able to support myself, find somewhere to live. And she's like, you realize you're almost done? And I said, yeah, but what am I going to do after this? I have no way to take care of myself. I need to get started and established now. Like, pick up the axe and start digging now. And she said, come back at the end of the day. We'll talk about it. I don't think this is a good idea. And at the end of the day, she said, hey, you're going to come stay with me. I know that you're talking to the National Guard recruiter. You've got some plans. You've got some things figured out. But without your college or high school education, it's going to be hard for you to join the Guard because you have to go and get your GED or you have to have some kind of college or high school equivalent. And I stayed with her, and the only stipulation was I had to go to school. Yeah. That's it. And if it weren't for Terry Cozart or other people in my life, like, I'd be like the rest of my family, addicted to prescription medication or chasing things I probably had no business chasing. So,
yeah, man, that's a awesome story. What I want to ask you about that is, I hear about people that come from rough backgrounds, and today, I mean, I would never know. I mean, you're an incredibly impressive individual, in my opinion. And I mean, to me, I look at you, you're a grinder, and now that you say that, it kind of makes it. Maybe I'm not right here to say this, but it kind of sounds like in part your background has motivated you to grind so hard to get where you are today. I see people out there today that they're in their early 30s and they're just having a rough time, right? They're not where they want to be, and it's they're impoverished or whatever the case may be. They're not working towards where they ultimately want to be in life, and they maybe haven't come from the best background. So for some of them, some people have come from great backgrounds and they're still not really doing much, but they haven't come from the best background, and they don't end up where you're at today. And so what I want to ask after having said all that is, how much in there was your choice? Like when I look at you, and I know you're giving a lot of credit to Miss Cozart, and I respect you for that. But you've had a lot of choices since high school. You've made a lot of choices to better yourself and to based on your background. Like you said, you could have ended up in a much different scenario, much worse scenario. You made a lot of choices. How much of it in there is choice, and how much of it is people like Miss Cozart influencing you, or good influences?
I think some of it's just right people, right time.
Yeah.
With the Miss Cozart. But have you ever heard the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
No.
You should look it up. And the premise or the background in that is negative experiences are positive experiences, and positive experiences are negative experiences. Because if I have to figure out how to eat today, I'm going to figure it out, where somebody who hasn't had that situation is going to fail, or they don't know where to start. They're starting a leg behind. And the whole premise of that is, everybody has problems. And you think about it like this: people who have family have problems, and people who don't have family have problems. And it's the opposite of the problems. Like, I have problems because my family is always in my business, or they're hovering, they won't let me grow. I don't have a family, and I have problems because I don't have a support system. I don't have a background, but I can take care of myself. I can cook. I can do my own laundry. I saw what, because before my mom forged that prescription, we were living in Colony Square, which is the projects in Smyrna, Imperial Gardens, Colony Square. I don't know if you're familiar with that area. It's over there. I'm trying to think, like maybe more towards Old Smyrna. It's a set of apartment complexes there, rent bait, or I don't know the terminology, but
income-based housing.
Yeah, exactly, income-based housing. So we were living over there. So before all that happened, we weren't doing very good. Our lights would get cut off. My mom's not a bad person. She just had choices that she would, rather make than, I guess, be a mother. So you just weigh that out, and
Right.
I saw that. You're right, and I was like, not for me, man. Not to hell with that.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of it's choices, but because I've come from maybe a negative choice situation where everything was the alternative instead of being like, we're going to go out to McDonald's today. It was like, what am I going to eat today? How am I going to figure this out? Like, oh, I can go to my friend's house because his mom always makes extra. Where, that's what I'm going to do today. Or I'm going to school, so I know I'm going to eat breakfast and lunch. And I think that, like that book says, I've always had the negative, and maybe that's really been a positive because nothing's going to throw me off my rocker. Like, if I lost my job, I've got money in savings. I have a plan. And I'm very cautious in certain aspects of my life where I'm like, if the world goes to shit tomorrow, I'm going to survive at least a week longer than somebody else, So maybe it's that.
I got you. That makes a lot of sense. I had when I was doing my MBA, I had a professor that came, and he was, I can't remember what class. It was an accounting course in my MBA, and he was a attorney or something like that. Very successful attorney, owned some big law firm in Nashville, multi-millionaire guy. And somebody in the class, when he got done giving his presentation, was like, "Why do you think you were successful?" And he was like, "Well, probably because I was disinherited as a kid." Or like he was basically, and I don't know exactly his wording, but he was basically saying like, I had a really rough childhood, and it drove me to be a survivor. It drove me, and so going back to what you said earlier from the premise of that book, like, yeah, there's some kids out there, I see them, they've been pampered their entire life, and it's destroyed them. My dad used to tell this story all the time. He talks about, apparently some old man told it to him as a little squirrel, and he was outside working on a little acorn or something like that. And this lady saw him working on his acorn. He's having a really tough time with the acorn. And so she feels bad for the squirrel. So she takes the acorn, she cracks it open for him, and he eats whatever's inside of it. And she does this for years. Well, eventually, his teeth grow so long that he can't eat. What she finds out later is that he needed to work on that acorn, right? He needed to gnaw his teeth down and learn how to crack acorns and feed himself to survive, right? And ultimately, it killed him. And so that's kind of just like, to your point, sometimes people don't. I'm not necessarily saying there's no justification for the roughness in your childhood or anything like that, but there's another thing I saw recently, not to drone on, but
no, you're good.
I saw this on TikTok or something, man, and it was like this, those motivational little videos and everything, and this guy was saying, hard times make strong men. Strong men make easy times. Easy times make weak men. Weak men make hard times. And it comes full circle.
For sure.
So anyway, I know I went off on a tangent there a little bit, but yeah, thanks for sharing that, Patrick.
No, I mean, powerful. It's good. I think that it all ties in. I think you're right. I think that when you're forced to struggle, what are the lessons you've learned in blood, quote unquote? You don't touch a hot stove by touching a hot stove.
Right.
Do you remember that, or anything that's ever happened to you where someone's like, "Don't do that because of this," and then they let you do it?
Yeah.
You can taste the pain sometimes. You're like, or you cringe because you're like, "Oh, I'm an idiot. I've done this thing that somebody literally warned me not to."
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of been the story of my life. Like, trial and error. I've learned so many lessons in blood that I'm like, thank God I'm still walking around. I should be dead right now. So
yeah. Okay, one more story. Now that you say that, I remember my dad telling me one time I had to learn a lesson about not messing with hornets.
Oh,
Big ass hornet nest on the side of our house. My dad kept telling me, "Hey, that's a hornet nest." I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. Don't mess with it. I know it looks cool, but don't mess with it. And I, every time my brother tells the story all the time at family holidays. He thinks it's hilarious, but it's a powerful lesson for me. I ended up throwing sticks at the hornet nest, and eventually I hit it, and they fired me up. And it was one of the most powerful lessons, like you're saying. I had to learn that lesson. Like, Dad told me, don't do this. I did it anyway, and those hornets fired me up. Anyway, so to your point. Okay, I want to go back.
Sure. I'm here for you, because this is great for me. So as long or as far as you want to go back, like, this is like, I'm living my dream right now. This is checking off something off the bucket list. So this
has been a blast for me, man.
Yeah.
We've been at it probably at least an hour. So honestly, I'm gonna respect your time. I just want to mention a few more things,
sure,
and then we'll wrap it up. Unless you have some other stuff you want to talk about.
No, whatever. I mean, I'm here, and I could talk about anything all day. My wife hates it. She's like, "You can make friends with a stop sign." I'm like, "Yeah."
That's a good thing, particularly in your profession, having to talk to so many people.
Oh, yeah.
Communicate so much. I have a few things that I want to say just anywhere within corporate finance or within any organization that kind of bother me and are challenges. And I wanted to see if you had any that you think people should know about and can help us to have a better overall organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a little bit of a list right here of things, and I want to get your thoughts on them. So the first one is ineffective meetings. Have you been in ineffective meetings in your career?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So have I. I have gone into so many meetings over the course of my career and like walked out of the meeting and like I didn't get anything from that. It was a waste of time. Honestly, obviously, the grind in accounting and finance. You don't have time to waste. There's always something to do. We don't have time for ineffective meetings. What do you think we can do to make meetings more effective?
Have you heard like Elon Musk's philosophy on this?
I haven't.
Get up, leave the meeting. That needs to be the socially accepted norm.
When it's a waste of time?
Correct. Like if I have no business being in there, because a lot of people, they're like, oh, we need finances input.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you needed my input before we got here, but now that we're here, it sounds like you guys know what you're going to do and you're proceeding forward. You want me to tell you it's a good idea? Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah. You guys have figured it out already. No need for me to be here. But if this is not relevant, people just think like, oh, this person should be here, or because we're finance or accounting, we should get their perspective. And it's like an email would have sufficed. Hey, what's your take on this? Yeah. Or how do you feel about this? And I'm like, what's the background? What's going on? But bringing me into a meeting that's already over or halfway established, like I don't feel effective sometimes. So I think that what Elon Musk said is, get up. If I don't need to be here, then I don't need to be here. Like
just walk out. Yeah.
Yeah, but like not in a rude way, not disrupting the meeting. Like just gather your stuff and then head out. And then if people see you leave, then they obviously know, oh, well, this person doesn't need to be involved in this or something like that. So
yeah,
I don't know how you feel about that, because sometimes when you leave a meeting, it's like everybody stops, looks, and then you're like kind of ostracized. But to me, I think that that's a good philosophy, because I've been in meetings for 8 hours straight. I haven't had a lunch or gone to the bathroom, and I get up halfway through the meeting and they're like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been in a meeting for 4 hours straight. I'm gonna go use the bathroom. I'll be right back." So
I would 100% agree with you, man. It's just you're saying I'm not okay with wasting any time. That's a totally fair thing to do. Organizations, I think they absolutely need it. We don't have time to waste. Every moment we waste, there are dollars going out the door, whether you realize it or not.
For sure.
Another thing, and I think this is super toxic in organizations. I want to know if you've seen anything like it. I sometimes see unproductive chatter, which I would, out in the real world, I would call gossiping, or just talking about things or people that it doesn't add any value or build relationships or do anything for the organization. It only detracts from our mission. I'll give you an example. In organizations, I have seen people will be on a call together in a room, and somebody, I'll give you this story I saw recently. This was crazy to me. There was it was an exec in a company I was working in. He's talking to some reps on a Zoom call, and he keeps his door open so I can like hear, I can hear what's going on. And the reps are sitting here talking to him, and they're sharing their screen. And so they have an instant messenger where they're like kind of communicating back and forth on their side of the call together. And he can see the instant messenger. They're presenting, but they don't realize they're also presenting their instant messenger. And so he's like, he's listening to him and talking, and he realizes they're starting to say negative things about him on the call. And so he's like, hey guys, I just want to let you know, I can see your presentation, but I can also see your instant messenger. I just want to be fair. Before he was trying to warn them, like, before you say anything that you don't want me to see. They're like, oh yeah, don't worry about it, man, no problem. Well, we got it. They're not even listening to what he's saying. So they go on with the meeting. 5 minutes later, I'm listening to this whole thing, and it's hilarious to me, honestly. And they're like, eventually, they're like saying really bad stuff about him. He's like, guys, I have to stop the meeting. Like, I can see everything that you're typing right now. And it was, they're talking crap about it. Just like, you know what I'm saying? In this case, it's a client-customer organization situation, but I see it in organizations with coworkers where you're just doing things that detract, like saying negative things, detracting from people and situations. And it's like, dude, this is not fruitful. It doesn't help at all. And in that particular case, it costed them in a major way. But it costs organizations any sort of chitter chatter, gossiping, or talking bad about other people. It doesn't help organizations, in my opinion. It really takes away from it. It built a toxic culture. Have you witnessed anything like this?
At Cummins, a little bit. There were certain middle management that were, I felt no value added, and kind of maintained that mindset because they were stuck where they were at, and they were pretty miserable.
Yeah.
And that, I get what you're saying. So idle chatter to me is fine as long as it's team building, or like, hey, I get to know you as a person, and like I might need a request, and I know that Ryan likes baseball, right? And I'm like, start off talking a little baseball, and then we get down to the brass tacks and stuff like that. And it's just a nice opening. But what you were saying is disgusting. Like, people should not treat other people like that. And unfortunately, I don't think that the performance reviews are used like they should, because we always highlight the negatives or what we've done. But it's hard for people to have those conversations to say, hey, you're doing a good job in these areas, but hey, your personal soft skills are really terrible. And if you keep this up, unfortunately you won't be with an organization. I just got back from a trip with the company that I'm at now, and one of the individuals there, who I guess will remain nameless, had been in HR for 32 years, but would not hire people based on the fact that that person was from the town, and said, a candidate didn't grow up in a good home or didn't have a good background. Could you imagine the talent you're using on something you don't know? Like, that person is separate or not a part of that. Their family is not their identity, and you're not hiring people talent-wise based on the fact that they don't come from a good family. I don't come from a good family. Would you not hire me?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that those people need to be, it's cancer in the organization. It's disgusting behavior, and they need to be cut away immediately. I don't know.
That's exactly the phrasing I would use. Cancer in the organization. Need to be cut away immediately. Okay.
I mean, people say negative things about people. You're not going to get that ever out of an organization, because you can't control somebody. Like, when you wake up, the only person you can control is you that day. You can influence people and try to guide them along the right path, but you're not going to control anybody else, period, ever. Yeah. So that being said, I think that we'll never get away from that, but there needs to be stricter or harsher consequences on people who are blatantly being detractors. And it's hard because it's subjective. Like, what you consider, or I consider, bad behavior or detractors might be within a realm of tolerance, because everybody has bad days. And what if that day you're like, right, forget this company, and you're just having a moment or something like that. So I think it would be hard to really...
So hard to identify.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But I would emphasize what you said. It's cancer. It needs to be cut away if you can identify. I saw something the other day. He was some exec on LinkedIn for something, and he was saying that you need to do a culture audit. And I think that's a good idea.
Question on that though, just to play devil's advocate, what are you gonna do about groupthink whenever you facilitate or grow a culture that's not diverse or different? Like, what if you run into that scenario where you hire a certain type or a certain personality, and then you don't grow because you're not getting someone who might be more loud or more boisterous about certain things, and instead of raising their hand where something doesn't make sense and being like, hey, this is stupid, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And just being like, oh, well, this is what we're doing and stuff like that. That's the only, like, the devil advocate piece to that. Like, sometimes maybe you need those detractors because they're ultimately the people who are going to raise their hand on the common sense things and being like, this is stupid, we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Sometimes those people are aspects of their personality where they're a little bit combative is actually really effective. They create constructive conflict. It's only when it becomes like this is clearly not helpful behavior that it. So I get what you're saying. I want to say one thing I really liked about Cummins that I've tried to like communicate to other organizations I've been in is the fact that diversity. So they were always so much about diversity, and I thought that was. I mean, it's a very strong, a good company. I thought that was a beautiful thing about them. I think that's if you're a company that's seeking diversity, whatever it is, whether it's backgrounds, mindsets, racial, whatever it is, that's a beautiful thing to do. I want to speak on your cultural correction thing. You talked about Warren Buffett earlier, and one of the reasons I have him up there. I've heard that one of the ways he deals with when he goes in and buys a new company, oftentimes he's quoted having said something to the effect of, it's really hard to change culture, right? So he'll go in and like sweep, because he knows that culture is everything in a company. You can have a company that has really poor economic prospects, but if you have a great culture, it could become a decent company. You can have a company that has just the opposite of that, but has a really poor culture, and it'll perform poorly. And so a lot of times he'll come in and sweep, he'll sweep those mindsets out and change the culture. So I think that kind of speaks a little bit to what you're saying. All right. So like I said before, did you have something else you want to say on that?
No, I'm good. You're right. The affinity groups at Cummins, the WAG, and then the African American affinity group, the Veterans affinity group. That is something that I can say that was a huge benefit to being there, is to see that everything and everybody was welcome.
Yes. I loved that. I did love that too. Okay, one more thing, unless you don't have anything else.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
I hear people a lot, and I know you're like this, so that's why I'm even gonna say it, because you're one of these people that I know in organizations that you see something doesn't make sense or whatever, you don't mind. You're gonna say what you think. It kind of relates to what I'm about to say. Dumb questions. I have people say to me all the time, Ryan, this is a dumb question, but this and this and that. I think dumb questions are so important in an organization. Going back to the meeting thing. So often in meetings, I will sit down, somebody's giving a presentation on something. This is really supposed to be something we're focusing on. It's a big initiative for the company. You got 10 or 15 people in the room. And then we get towards the end of the meeting, and there's a load of shit that I don't understand what was said. I don't know what the deliverable is for me or what I need to be doing, or what that meant, what was that acronym, yada, yada, yada. And so I got like a list of questions. And I'm about to go through all of them, right? And that's what I do, and I annoy people. And then when I get out of the meeting, it'll always be this thing where I let everybody else answer. This is one thing I'll do. Because I don't want to like ask something if somebody else is already going to answer it. And then we'll get out of the meeting and people will come to me and say, Ryan, thanks for asking that question, because I didn't know the answer to that. And so my opinion is, you cannot be scared to look dumb. You cannot be scared to ask the dumb question. What do you think about that?
When someone asks me a dumb question, always positive reinforcement through the get-go, even if it is a true dumb question, because I'd rather have somebody ask me than start building a foundation for a project and then my foundation be weak because I did not know something or see something. And now I make a joke out of it coming into a new industry. I'm like, can you explain to me this situation like I eat crayons? Because like I have no idea what's going on, and I just own it. And I'm like, I don't understand, and I'm, close to 2 months to being in. I don't have a concept, and you've been here a long time, so help me understand. And I just make it like commonplace for me, because like I'll tell anybody, I'm like, I'm an idiot. Like if I've made it through something, you can make it through, because somebody once told me this, but people who are dumber than you have made it through a situation or a school or anything like that. So I just kind of embrace that. And then like I talk to people, I'm like, hey, I'm an idiot. I don't understand this. And it could be a little bit self-demeaning, but I think it helps people relate, because it kind of breaks that ice. Like, hey, explain this to me like I can't write my name or something like that. And they're like, oh, because they've all been in that situation.
Yeah.
And you said it perfectly. How many meetings have you been in where you're like, I don't know what they want from me. What do I owe them? What do they expect of me? Yeah. And I'm in there and asking, I'm like, when is this due? What exactly do you want? Am I understanding this right? And I put together mock-ups usually before I go full throttle into a project.
Yeah.
And the quality of the data is more important to me than how it looks. And you wouldn't believe how many times somebody said, well, this doesn't look right or look nice and stuff like that. And I'm like, would you rather the data be right or for it to look pretty? Because I can get there, but it's all because I want to ask the question and really understand the do out or the ask. And I'll be that person anytime anybody needs somebody to ask a stupid question. That'll be me. And I'm glad you asked that, because I feel like people are afraid. Have you ever heard of imposter syndrome?
I have. I can forget what it is.
Apparently it affects more females than it does males, but it's basically you get into a role or position that you don't think you're qualified for, and it's like self-doubt. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh.
And I think I help eliminate, because I feel like that sometimes too. Like, I do well for myself, and sometimes I get there and I'm like, these people are paying me this much money to come into work today. Did they know that I would do this for so much less? Or am I really worth that? And I think that helps, knowing that inside me personally, like I'll ask the dumb questions, and that helps alleviate some of the other things that come along with it, like the imposter syndrome and stuff like that. Because you get in a situation where you're like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. What am I supposed to be doing? Am I really the right person for the job and stuff like that? And I'm like, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. This is deliverable. This is the basis or the assumption. And it's all so simple that I can literally I can build a spreadsheet, no problem. I can get this done by Friday, no problem. And I don't have to suffer through it thinking, I don't know if I belong here. What am I doing? What are they doing? Are they going to fire me?
Yeah.
So.
Dude, I'm glad you explained that concept, because I've seen that. I've seen that so many times. Like, two things I want to say on that. First of all, I love that you explain it. You said, explain it to me basically like I'm a kindergartner. That speaks to like low ego to me, and a desire to really you just care about getting things done. You don't care about anything, this other bullshit, which is what we all need. And going back to the imposter syndrome, that stuff right there is so toxic to organizations. And I have a theory on why I think people do it. And another reason why I think you don't do it. Number one, you're a low ego guy. But number two, you're a guy that you have a lot of options, right? You got 2 designations behind your name. You got years of experience, very smart individual. You can go, if your company that you're with today decides that they want to axe you, you'll go right to the next one. No problem.
The market's hot right now. I don't know if you know that, but $100,000 offers just willy-nilly, period.
Right, particularly for somebody like you.
Yeah, it's insane.
So you don't have to suffer from imposter syndrome. The times I have seen that, it's individuals that they're not confident because they're not coming from the same skill set that you're coming from. You see what I'm saying? There are individuals that have got into roles where they're maybe not as qualified. And so what happens is now every conversation you have with them, it's a complete exhausting exercise, because they're so concerned that you're going to think that they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't know something, and they're so afraid of that you can't get anything done. So yeah, I've seen that a lot.
Well, I think that there are imposters, and then the imposter syndrome, where you have someone who, like, I experience imposter syndrome. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm not where, like, I'm too far up or whatever, and I think that the imposter syndrome is more of a confidence thing, where the imposter is like somebody who has that golden tongue in that interview and saying, yes, I can deliver on everything that you need me to deliver on and stuff like that. And then you go to explain, like, what's EBITDA? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They're like, what's that? And you're like, oh, this is not good for you, my friend. This is like something, or like gross income, net income, or, you know, gross revenue, net revenue, and stuff like that. Right. And like when you're explaining like a fundamental concept,
right?
I think those you get the imposters, but with the imposter syndrome, it's like more of a self-doubt thing.
And I've had imposter syndrome as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
And I don't know why it affects more females than it does males. Probably because we're idiots and we're just like, I got this. I'll figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
We're not smart enough to realize how dumb we are.
But
just kidding.
Yeah. I'd heard the term when I was speaking at MTSU from a girl, and she had said, how do you feel about this? And, you know, I just so happened to read an article like a day or two before that, and like found out what that was. And I was like, huh. Yeah. I have that, and I got to connect with her on that. But then after that, I went and did a little bit more research and stuff like that. And I think that not having confidence in yourself kills you. And if you can throw away your ego, or, you know, not put the pressure on getting the job done, but understanding what the job is and then getting it done. Because I had an instance not too long ago in the military where my priorities were a little offset. I was more worried about pleasing my higher ups instead of kicking ass and doing the job that I'm responsible for. And I had to have a conversation with them and be like, hey, I need to admit something. I'm more worried about pleasing you than taking care of my guys. And I had to get back to square one. I had to be like, what am I here for? I'm here to take care of my guys. I'm here to do a good job. And in that, I will do that. And my wife had this best piece of advice. She goes, you've already gained their admiration and respect because you are where you are now. Focus on what you did to get that, not getting that.
Got you. Yeah.
And I was just like...
That's powerful.
From my wife.
Smart lady.
For sure. No finance, no leadership training, no anything. She was just like, stop being stupid. Like, they respect you. Or you're worried about them respecting you. That's what your problem is. I was the problem, and I had to put the ego aside, step away, and really admit to I'm so worried about the consequences of doing a bad job and not meeting expectations that I've broken my leg and I'm trying to run the race. I'm not going to get anywhere, as opposed to, hey, what am I here to do? Why am I here to do it? Why am I here to do that? Why? Okay, take care of my people, do a good job, outperform my peers. You know?
Yeah.
That's it. By doing what I know that I should be doing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's powerful.
Sidetrack.
That was so powerful. Thanks for sharing that. One thing I want to say as well, going back to the imposter syndrome, I like I said before, I definitely have faced it, and I'll find myself doing this, Patrick. I go on an emotional roller coaster within my career. I'm like, on one day, I'm like, dude, I'm on a high. I did all this right here for this organization. Yeah, they appreciate me. They recognize this. And then other days, I'm like, I don't really deserve to be in this position. I'm like, I'm not. You know what I'm saying? And so I waver. It's all. Do you play golf?
No, I have an innate ability to hit a golf ball vertically, and then it just falls back down in the same spot. I don't know what I do wrong, but I wish I could play a little golf.
Well, anybody that plays golf regularly will tell you it's the same thing. It's like some days, one hole, you may be like, this is the best game in the world. Next hole, you're like, I'm selling my clubs. And that's how my career's been a lot, you know? And I feel like other people feel like that. I'm glad you shared that. Well, dude, this has been an awesome podcast.
Oh, good.
I've had a blast, man. We've been at it. This has probably been over an hour and a half, I think. If you don't have anything else, man.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, brother.
I really appreciate it.